Hey y'all, it's Krypton Critics. I'm here to review the film War Room from 2015. I would like to shout out my non-biological aunt, also a good friend of my mother's and a good friend of mine, Sabrina, who suggested this movie. Uh, this was suggested to me after I had reviewed the film Bible Man, which is a ridiculous, Christian movie. This is another ridiculous Christian movie. Now, I can say right off the back, I did not ironically enjoy this one as much as I did Bible Man, but there is a lot to dissect. Now, this film stars Karen Abercrombie, Priscilla, Scherer, T.C. Stallings, and Lena Pitts. Now, the two main characters is this elderly, black woman who lost her husband back during the Vietnam War, and it's close to the modern day, 40 plus years later, and she accepts the fate that he received from dying in the war, and talks about how much she has a connection with God. Very kind of wisdomish, old lady that has a connection to God. Is seen in all types of fiction and somewhat in her life. She kind of becomes a mentor to another main character. The elderly woman is named Claire Williams. The younger woman that she meets is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, she's having a not so good marriage, and she's balancing that with her job, and her husband has a very high paying job. The husband slash father of her little daughter, he works at for a pharmaceutical company. She works to sell houses, and she wants to sell the old woman, Claire's home. And their tension grows more and more between the husband and wife, Elizabeth and her husband Tony, because he's been very preoccupied with work. He doesn't spend that much time at home. He doesn't have to see the best relationship with his daughter. It's kind of hinted at that he, thought about cheating, and I'll get that later. But the worst and best thing about this movie, best, it's only in the most ironic, hipster twirling mustache way possible, because some of it is just fucking terrible, and that's the dialogue. I wrote down some of the dialogue because it just stuck out so much to me. Tony, he has this friend that he meets at the gym, and he's like, I think he's the EMT. And Tony says to him, "You trying to CPR on my life? Trying to do CPR on my life? Like, that's bad." The elderly woman, she says, "Some people like their coffee hot. Some people like their coffee cold, but never lukewarm. Not even the Lord." What the fuck does that even mean? I'm gonna start saying that shit just by people, like if they ever bring up coffee, and just want to see what the reaction is, because that is some weird ass shit to be saying. But wait, there's more. The elderly woman also tells the man before this crazy guy wants to stab somebody. She says, "Now put that knife down in the name of Jesus." I laughed so hard when I heard that in the movie. Another thing is, she also says to our younger woman Elizabeth, with the struggling marriage, God is a good defense attorney. Now, that's just in like the first, I think, 30 to 40 minutes. Just some of just that shit. I'll get back to, the more entertaining line halfway through the movie about. So the big theme of this film is accepting God so you can be forgiven and you can change as a man. And Tony is the man that needs to be changed because in like the first half of this movie, he is just a dick. Like, he has about as much sympathy as Darth Vader does. It's completely ridiculous, and it becomes like cartoony at a point. Like, there is like no redeeming qualities to this fucking character. It's only in the sense, later, like you can understand it's like, oh, maybe he just wants to be protective, but it just, the way it's played off is really bad. And he starts changing. Apparently, the thing that makes this change is, Elizabeth, visually in the movie, she didn't have the strongest connection with God, so she starts praying again. Now she talks to the old woman, and she like puts notes in her closet and starts praying and talking to it. And we, at the same time, we see Tony on a date with this other chick that we had never met. I don't even think her name's even said in the movie. But they're like on a date, and clearly, thinking, oh yeah, he's gonna smash that shit. That's what you think in your head. But that doesn't happen because she prayed, and they just interspliced it. It could be the reason that he heard the waiter call her his wife, and that could have underlying message. But no, forget about that shit. Forget about real like character and how you can second guess yourself. Just think about how God intervenes and just completely changes the universe to make everything go well, except for if you are not, unless you try to sin. Now, if you've been on my channel, you probably know I'm an atheist. I have nothing against you being Christian or Muslim or Jewish. Do what you do, as long as you're not a dick. That's my philosophy. But the way that, faith and how it affects the world they're in, this is not something that actually happened, so it is completely fictitious. So to absolutely write it that God has a hand and physically moves the plot is not only contrived, it's lazy, and it just is misleading as all hell. Just like, well, my man will stop cheating with me if I start praying. Like, if I just believe in God enough. I'm like, that is irrelevant to how his life is going. Just because you're praying possibly in another city, it doesn't fucking change it. Just like, can there be a case made that there's a power in faith? Sure, but it just shows how lazy the writing is and how bullshit some of the writing is. Like, some of it is really contrived, especially in the beginning. And there's also a lot of bad edits in the beginning. It starts to get better later, but it's just like quick cuts and just like what what the fuck? That's how I experience, like, while watching these scenes. I'm like, these don't, they're not woven well. Just like a bunch of squares of different cloth and just forcefully putting them together. They don't match, and it just, the tapestry just looks ugly. There are probably only two really good scenes, like genuinely, not in an ironic sense, is when Tony breaks down and he realizes how he should change, and when his wife breaks down and she starts to ask God for forgiveness, because those were acted well. Now, the acting in this is so flip floppy, and sometimes it doesn't match with the scene is supposed to be, how the tone is supposed to be. It just so much is clashing. It doesn't feel very cohesive, and many times, big chunks of this movie don't feel like it's the same one. Like the whole story about the elderly woman Clara and her dead husband, and the end we find out that he died because she had a crisis of faith. Are you fucking kidding me? I would argue that he may have died because he was shot by Viet Cong. He got blown up by napalm. Not because you fucking lost faith. That's bullshit, okay? Just because you have lost faith, God's going to punish, your existence by killing your husband. I'm sorry, but if God is going to do that to you, then he's a dick, and you shouldn't put that kind of effort into like accepting him. Now, once again, let me iterate. If you like this movie, whatever. But this movie is as sappy as consuming an entire container of syrup. And I can completely see this, as completely objectively, because this is a fictitious world. None of this happened. It's not like a biography of any type. It's just, well, we wanted to appeal to the Christian demographic. Let's bring in, the sadness of war and veterans. Let's bring in a black cast and show them as positive. Nothing against that, but the performances and the contrivedness of, oh, this happens, snap, 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 is at lowest it's irritating. At most it's horribly disenfranchising and just sad. And not in the sense that they're trying to make you sad, make this a tearjerker, because if it is, that's a lousy ass, like, way to show it. Now, I will be fair with this movie. Those two scenes really do bring it up, and there are a few, like, sprinkled moments that are decent, and I can tell that, the actors are really trying to play through and not just play to a type. But possibly one of the most ridiculous things about this movie is the song cues of like playing pop, Christian music, or gospel music just out of nowhere to have a montage. These fucking montages, and like, oh my god, are we in 1980 with a comedy? Like, what is this? It doesn't flow, and whenever I hear that music, I feel like I'm gonna cry from fucking laughter. It is just ridiculous. There's so much unintentional funny, especially in the first part. I even laughed when, the dad, Tony, husband, like, has a dream that he's fighting himself, who's a dick, and the way they shot that is, holy crap, amateur and just terrible. Just like, I've seen better dream sequences tackled in like 90s sitcoms, with bullshit budget. Really, one of the characters I had like more sympathy for wasn't Danielle, their little daughter, but it was Jenny. Just how awkward, the mother made it, because at a certain point you're just like, this she's fucking lost her marbles. Like, I know that they're trying to show that she has conflict and she wants to keep her man and move on with God, but the way that she's like eating chips in a closet, saying don't tell him, chips, throwing shoes on the back of their porch, just almost acting threatening around Danielle's friend. It just, oh god, that was, Jesus, that made me laugh and like cringe at the same time. I was also entertained, right after having the good scene of the mother slash wife, Elizabeth, breaking down. She goes outside and she starts shouting at the devil, and she says, "This house is under new management, and that means that you are out." And another thing, when you're writing a script and you put in another thing, you fucked up. Anyway, back to the quote. And another thing, "I am so sick of you stealing my joy." Some of this movie I ironically just love. It's just delectable. But other times it just, God, this is boring. I don't like when Danielle, we find out she's into sports. She wants to play like double dutch, and then have double dutch competition. They get second place. I'm like, I don't fucking care. I did laugh one time. There was a little girl in the audience that just had the biggest doe eyes, and she just looked like she didn't know where the fuck she was. That was funny, unintentionally. So extra shows, sometimes they bring out the best humor. There's a full through of main character Elizabeth having sore feet, and the way that everything's wrapped up in a typo of everything being all freaking peaches and cream. Story ending is her husband massages her feet and gives her a fudge sundae, just like what. But I'm glad that we could have a cap off of something wholly ridiculous, of the elderly woman Clara just having like this passionate speech about accepting Jesus in like the mirror of her fucking house, and then we have like quick shots back and forth, and we just see a bunch of random people like at dinner tables walking to a church, and I'm just like, what? Who are these people? I'm like, only one of those shots was someone relevant, and that was Danielle, the little daughter. But everybody else, I'm like, I don't fucking care. It's like, what is this bullshit? Oh my god. But yeah, back to the foot massage. Elizabeth says, "I'm eating my favorite dessert while my husband is rubbing my feet. There has to be a God in heaven." And one of the things I wasn't a fan of is I wanted, if you're gonna go full what the fuck, I'm not, just unintentionally bad. I'm just like, go full for it. But towards like around the time when we start entering the third act, it starts being less ironically funny, and it's just like, get to that. Part of me wants that that chunk to be just cut out, so I can just have non-stop laughter. I give this movie an ironic B+. Actually, it's what it's supposed to be. It's fucking D. Jesus. Once again, not bashing you if you are Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. I already mentioned I am an atheist, but just looking at it in a film perspective and how it communicates to the audience, not just on, well, I'm gonna hate it because it's a Christian film. That's not the case here. Because a Christian movie can be done well. I do like, what was it, that 90s, I think it was DreamWorks movie about, Exodus and freaking Moses. That was really well done, and I really enjoyed that movie. It doesn't bother me that it's a Christian movie. It's just like, if you do something well, I'm going to commend you on that. If you do something badly, you did something badly. And that's where, I understand the film. It's part of the critics. I love it.